December 27th, 1979. Before dawn, the Soviet-Afghan border. The air is thin and sharp, biting through wool uniforms and steel helmets. Engines idle low in the darkness, their vibrations traveling through frozen ground and into the boots of the men standing beside them. Headlights stay off. Cigarettes are crushed under heels before they can glow. Orders have already been given, quietly, deliberately. There will be no turning back once the line is crossed. Among the young soldiers waiting is Private Bakhriddin Khakimov. He is 20 years old. Khakimov adjusts the sling of his AK-74, feeling the familiar weight settle against his chest. He smells diesel, cold metal, and unwashed canvas. Around him, columns of Soviet armor stretch into the darkness. BMP infantry vehicles, T-62 tanks, supply trucks loaded with ammunition, rations, and fuel for a war no one is calling a war yet. Officially, this is a limited military operation. Unofficially, every man here knows the truth. They are crossing into Afghanistan. Khakimov does not speak. He doesn't need to. Like most of the conscripts around him, he was told very little before being shipped south. Orders came quickly. Training was rushed. Maps were vague. But he remembers the words of his unit commander the night before. "We go in, we stabilize the situation, and we come home." It sounded simple enough. The vehicles begin to move. Steel tracks grind forward. Boots march. The border disappears behind them, swallowed by darkness and dust. Afghanistan opens ahead. Mountains rising like black walls, villages scattered in the valleys below, unseen eyes already watching from the ridge lines. Within hours, the first shots will be fired. Weeks later, Khakimov's unit is no longer marching. It is fighting. By early 1980, the illusion of a short mission has evaporated. Soviet patrols move cautiously through hostile terrain, narrow roads flanked by mud brick compounds, irrigation canals cutting across fields, mountains that provide perfect cover for ambush. The enemy is everywhere and nowhere at once. The Mujahideen do not fight in formations. They strike and vanish. One moment the road is quiet. The next it erupts in gunfire, RPGs streaking from unseen positions. Khakimov learns quickly. He learns how to move low, how to scan rooftops, how to tell the difference between a farmer and a fighter by the way a man watches you pass. He learns fear, not the sudden panic of training exercises, but the slow, constant pressure that settles into the chest and never leaves. Then comes the battle that erases him from history. It happens during a sweep operation near a rural settlement, its name never properly recorded. The sun is already high, heat reflecting off stone and sand. Khakimov's platoon advances through uneven ground when the first explosion tears open the air. An RPG detonates near the lead vehicle. The ambush is immediate. Gunfire snaps from the hills. Dust clouds explode around the soldiers as rounds strike the ground. Someone screams. Someone else shouts, orders that vanish beneath the noise. Khakimov drops to one knee, raises his rifle, fires toward a muzzle flash he barely sees. Then the world detonates. A blast throws him backward. Pain erupts through his body, white, blinding, total. Shrapnel tears into flesh. The sky spins. He hits the ground hard, breath ripped from his lungs. Sound fades into a dull ringing. Around him, the fight surges on. Boots pound past him. Someone fires from just over his head. Smoke rolls across the field, thick and choking. Khakimov tries to move, but his body does not respond. His vision tunnels. Blood soaks into the dirt beneath him. And then, nothing. When the firing finally stops, the battlefield is chaos. The Soviets regroup, count their dead, load the wounded. Medics work fast, triaging under threat of another attack. Bodies are pulled from the dust, names are shouted, numbers checked. But Bakhriddin Khakimov is not found. There is no time to search every ravine, every collapsed wall. Intelligence reports warn of reinforcements moving in. The order is given to withdraw. The unit pulls back, leaving behind what it cannot carry. Khakimov's name is written down as missing in action. Days later, it will be changed to killed in action. No body is recovered. Back in the Soviet Union, a formal notice arrives at his family's home. The language is cold, standardized, final. Your son died bravely in the line of duty. There is no grave to visit, no coffin to bury, only absence. His family mourns him as the state instructs them to do, quietly, officially, permanently. But Khakimov is not dead. He wakes to unfamiliar voices. The ceiling above him is not concrete or canvas, but rough wooden beams. The air smells of herbs, smoke, and earth. Pain floods back into his body, sharper now, more precise. He tries to speak, but the words come out wrong, slurred, broken. Hands press him back down. Afghan villagers found him hours after the battle ended. They had crept out cautiously once the shooting stopped, expecting bodies, not survivors. Khakimov lay half-buried in dust and blood, barely breathing. To leave him would have meant death. To help him meant risk, Soviet patrols, reprisals, suspicion from both sides. They carried him anyway. Days pass in fragments, fever, darkness, moments of awareness followed by long stretches of nothing. Shrapnel is removed without anesthesia. Wounds are cleaned with boiled water and cloth. Pain becomes constant, then distant, then strangely unreal. Khakimov survives, but something is lost in the process. His memories fracture, faces blur, names slip away, Russian words feel foreign on his tongue. When he tries to remember home, he finds only impressions. Snow, a voice, a feeling of distance. His old life recedes like a dream fading after waking. The villagers give him time. Weeks turn into months. When he can finally walk again, he no longer knows where back is, and no one is coming to find him. Here, in this place he once entered as an invader, Bakhriddin Khakimov begins to disappear, slowly, quietly, into another life entirely. The seasons change before Bakhriddin Khakimov fully understands that he is still alive. Winter gives way to spring. Snow melts from the distant mountains, feeding streams that cut through the valley. Crops are planted. Animals return to pasture. Life resumes its rhythm around him, indifferent to the war still raging just beyond the hills. Khakimov learns to sit before he learns to stand. His body heals unevenly. One leg never fully regains its strength. Old wounds ache when the air turns cold. His hands bear scars that do not fade. But it is his mind that has changed the most. The sharp clarity of his former life is gone. In its place are fragments. Images without sequence, emotions without names. Sometimes he dreams of engines and metal, of shouting voices in a language he no longer understands when he wakes. The villagers call him Abdullah. At first, it is only a convenience. They need a name for him. Something simple, something local. Over time, it becomes permanent. Bakhriddin Khakimov fades further into the background until even he no longer recognizes the sound of it. Abdullah learns Dari and Pashto the hard way, through repetition, gestures, correction, and necessity. Words are tools here, not abstractions. You learn them to ask for water, to give thanks, to warn someone of danger. Slowly, his mouth forgets Russian entirely. The sounds feel unnatural now, as if they belong to someone else. The war never truly leaves. Soviet helicopters pass overhead, their rotors chopping the sky. Columns of armor move along distant roads, visible only as dust trails. Occasionally, gunfire echoes through the mountains. The villagers know when to hide, when to pretend nothing is happening, when to disappear into the landscape until the danger passes. Abdullah does not fight again. He is no longer a soldier to either side, too foreign to be fully Afghan, too lost to be Soviet. He exists in the margins, protected by the village that saved him. In Afghanistan, survival often depends on such quiet arrangements. Years pass. By the mid-1980s, Abdullah has become useful. An older man in the village, a traditional healer, notices his patients. He sees how Abdullah listens, how he remembers mixtures, how he observes symptoms without rushing. Knowledge is passed orally here, carefully, slowly. Herbs, poultices, compresses. Which roots reduce fever, which leaves stop bleeding, which mistakes kill. Abdullah learns all of it. He learns by watching hands, by smelling crushed plants, by memorizing outcomes. He learns that healing is not just medicine, but trust. People must believe you can help them, or they will not come. By the time the Soviets begin withdrawing in 1988, Abdullah is no longer an outsider. The war that took his past ends without him noticing. In February 1989, the last Soviet troops cross back over the border. Cameras capture smiling soldiers, waving flags, commanders making speeches. In Moscow, the war becomes history, controversial, painful, and slowly forgotten. No one mentions Private Bakhriddin Khakimov. His file remains closed. Afghanistan does not find peace. The Soviet withdrawal gives way to civil war. Mujahideen factions turn on each other. Towns change hands. Roads become dangerous. Entire regions fall into lawlessness. Through it all, Abdullah stays where he is. By now, he has a reputation. People walk long distances to see him. He treats children with infections, men with old wounds, women suffering from illnesses they cannot speak of openly. He asks no fixed price. Payment comes in food, cloth, labor, or respect. His past becomes irrelevant. He grows a long beard, wears traditional clothing, prays as the villagers pray, observes the rhythms of life around him. The man who once carried an assault rifle now carries bundles of dried herbs tied with twine. Sometimes, rarely, something stirs. A word overheard from a passing trader. A fragment of a melody. The sight of a metal vehicle triggers a tightening in his chest he cannot explain. But the feelings pass. They always do. Memory, when not reinforced, erodes. In the 1990s, Afghanistan fractures again. The Taliban rise. Herat changes hands. Rules shift overnight. Music disappears. Faces harden. Abdullah keeps his head down. He is useful. He heals. That gives him protection. By now, even if someone had told him he was once a Soviet soldier, he might not have believed them. But far away, in Russia, the past is being disturbed. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, records are reopened. Families begin asking questions. Volunteer organizations form. Groups of former officers, historians, and civilians determined to find those who never came home. They call themselves searchers. Their work is slow, methodical, and often heartbreaking. Most cases end in confirmation of death. Mass graves, old reports, nothing more. But occasionally, rumors surface. A former soldier seen in a foreign land. A man who speaks with an accent. Someone who remembers fragments of Russian words. Most leads go nowhere, until one doesn't. In the early 2000s, a report reaches one such group. It speaks of a traditional healer in Herat, an older man. Quiet, respected, there are whispers, nothing certain, about his origins. A mention that he once came from the north. a vague suggestion that he was found wounded long ago. The searchers take note. They begin cross-referencing missing personnel lists. One name stands out: Bakhriddin Khakimov. Missing in action, no body recovered. Declared dead in 1980. Region of disappearance matches. It is a long shot. Most are. But the group has learned something over the years. War does not always kill cleanly. Sometimes it leaves people stranded between worlds. In 2013, after months of preparation, they travel to Afghanistan. They do not know what they will find. They only know that if Abdullah is Khakimov, then somewhere beneath decades of silence and survival, a story has been waiting to be uncovered. And history is about to knock on his door. Herat, Western Afghanistan. Spring, 2013. The city wakes slowly under a pale morning sun. Market stalls open one by one. Donkeys pull carts through narrow streets. The air carries dust, spice, and the distant call to prayer. Decades of war have left their marks here. Scarred walls, patched roads, buildings older than any living memory. Inside a modest clinic, Sheikh Abdullah prepares for another day. He moves carefully now. Age has stiffened his joints. Old wounds still speak when the weather changes. He washes his hands, sorts bundles of dried plants, and waits. People will come soon. Someone always does. He does not notice the unfamiliar men at first. They stand out in small ways. Their posture, their hesitation, the way they look at him. Not like patients, but like men searching for something specific. One of them speaks to a local interpreter. Abdullah watches from across the room, expression neutral. When the interpreter finally approaches, he is polite. "There are visitors who would like to speak with you." Abdullah nods. He has heard stranger requests. They sit across from him on low cushions. Tea is poured. The ritual matters. Trust begins with small gestures here. One of the men, gray-haired, careful in his movements, studies Abdullah's face longer than politeness allows. Then quietly, he says a word, a name. Bakhriddin. The sound lands without meaning. Abdullah does not react. The men exchange glances. The interpreter tries again, asking questions. Where are you from? How did you come here? Do you remember being a soldier? Abdullah answers honestly. He does not know. He does not remember. He has always been here, as far as his mind can reach. The men are patient. They show him old photographs, grainy black and white images of young soldiers in uniform. A face that should be his, but isn't. Or maybe is. He studies it with mild curiosity, like a stranger's portrait. Nothing stirs. Then they try something else. A few words in Russian. The language sounds wrong to his ears, harsh, unfamiliar. He shakes his head. He does not understand. The interpreter watches closely. So do the visitors. There is no deception here, no flicker of recognition. And yet, the records are precise. Height, scars, date, and location of disappearance. Everything aligns. One of the men finally says it plainly. You were declared dead in 1980. Abdullah looks at him, untroubled. I am alive, he replies. The statement is simple, final. Confirmation does not come in a single moment. It comes through details. A scar on the leg, documented in military medical records. Shrapnel patterns that match reports from the ambush site. A blood type. Even a faint birthmark, long forgotten by family, but preserved in paperwork. Piece by piece, the past reassembles itself. The Russian volunteers are careful. They do not force memory. They do not insist he becomes someone else. They explain, slowly, respectfully. They tell him of a country that no longer exists, of parents who waited, of a war that ended decades ago. Abdullah listens. He feels no shock, no sudden revelation, only a distant awareness that the man they describe might once have been him. They offer him a choice: return to Russia, reconnect with what remains of his family, receive citizenship, assistance, recognition as a veteran who survived the impossible, or stay. There is no pressure. They have learned not to expect gratitude or closure or transformation. Their role is only to uncover truth, not to dictate its consequences. Abdullah asks for time. That evening, he walks through Herat alone. He passes the places that shaped him: the clinic, the mosque, the homes of people he has helped. Children greet him by name. Shopkeepers nod. This city knows him. This land carried him when he could not stand. Russia, by contrast, is an abstraction, a place of snow and uniforms, of orders and weapons, of a life interrupted so completely that it never returned. Even if he went back, who would he be? The man named Bakhriddin Khakimov belongs to a past sealed by official documents and faded photographs. Sheikh Abdullah belongs here. When the volunteers return the next day, his decision is already made. He will remain in Afghanistan. They accept it. Before leaving, they take photographs. They record testimony. They notify authorities. Files are reopened. Status is updated. A name long listed among the dead is quietly corrected. Alive. News spreads quickly once it reaches Russia. Headlines speak of a lost soldier found. Journalists recount the story with disbelief. For some, it is a miracle. For others, a symbol of a war that never truly ended for those who fought it. Khakimov's surviving relatives are informed. They are told that the son, brother, or cousin they mourned for over 30 years lived another life instead. There is relief, confusion, and sorrow all at once. They will never embrace him again. But now they know. The silence has an answer. Back in Herat, life continues. Abdullah returns to his work. Patients come. Herbs are prepared. Illness is treated. The past visits him occasionally now, carried by distant echoes of recognition, but it does not reclaim him. He has crossed too many boundaries to go back. War took him from one world and left him in another. It erased his old life without ending it, creating something quieter, stranger, and more human in its place. He was once a soldier sent to fight a war he did not choose. He became a man who survived it by staying.